Right, we're absolutely delighted to have the wonderful Crystal Danbury. It's nice to see you, Crystal. It's been a while.
Lovely to see you too, mate.
And we brought Crystal in because I've had the pleasure of working with Crystal for a number of years now, through the dreaded COVID period, which was difficult for everyone.
Mm.
But straight out of COVID, I've kept an eye on the amazing work that Crystal has been doing herself, and her story, the work she's done, how she's risen through the ranks. And as well is the admirable work she's done as a fantastic female within the profession, which is again something I really hold dear to my heart. And so we're going to have a quick chat with Crystal about her experience, her background, and then ask some questions around the future of the EHS profession today and later on in the future. So quick one from you, Crystal. Talk to us a little bit about yourself. Where have you come from? Did you come out? Did you fall into EHS like a lot of people? I mean, that seems to be the common thing at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. Do you know what? It's the common thread for people that love it. I find if you've been pushed into it or found it through some other means, it doesn't seem to be as big a passion. The people that you find hooked into it love it. Like I fell in and I stayed in. So my background absolutely fell into it. I actually started off being a cleaner and also working in Domino's Pizza. And I think I said this on a couple of podcasts. I just had one rule because when you are cleaning pubs, cleaning toilets, cleaning offices, I used to get up at 6 a.m., clean from 6 to 8, go to college and go to offices, clean that, work at the weekends as a waitress, and then for a little while did some admin work. And then also, yeah, worked in Domino's Pizza, cleaned a pub on the side of that. And I had one rule, which was always apply for a job and forget the rank, the sector, whatever. Always apply for a job that will teach you something you don't know. That was my one rule. So if it was I was a cleaner and I could clean in a different area of town in a location that I didn't know anything about, I would apply for that job.
Yeah.
And so one of the jobs that I applied for was a lab hand on a nuclear site, and they actually put my CV in the wrong pile.
Oh,
Um, and they accidentally put me in for a junior role in the health physics, so it's radiation safety technician office. They put
right.
me in the wrong pile and they gave me the job. And then nobody realised that they put me in the wrong pile for weeks until I said, "Are we going to go in a lab at any point? Because I haven't cleared anything up yet." And they realised that they put me in the wrong pile, but they sort of offered me like, "Do you want to stay with the lads or do you want to like go into the lab?" I was like, "No, the lads are sound." There was 22 male technicians, pretty much 94% of them would have been over 50. And then I worked with 60 engineers, again, all between like 30 and 60. And I got to get absolutely filthy all day long, which was my cup of tea. So climb stacks, waded rivers, decontaminated. But I became a national responder for nuclear emergency nuclear spills about 19 years old, having come from like Domino's. And so yeah, properly bed my teeth, trained with Bucks Fire and Rescue to respond to like fires in labs. And like basically just had the time of my life.
Wow.
And it was all fine as long as you only wanted to earn 14 grand a year. So I worked really hard and do shifts. So yeah, completely fell into it by accident. And it was pretty much in that role that there was the oddest setup. So this would have been 21 years ago. And there was one building for technicians and our engineers. And then there was another building called Building 9, which was where all the managers were, and they didn't meet.
Mm.
And they used to create processes and risk assessments and all this sort of stuff in this Building 9. And they would just sort of post it or email it. No one spoke to us. No one understood what we did for a living, but also it was very dangerous, right? We're talking about nuclear cyclotrons. We're talking climbing 40-foot stacks. We're talking proper serious risk. And it was at that point I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna," we're just like, "Well, I'm gonna have to just go into management, and because this can't happen on other sites. I can't have other technicians or engineers facing risk and then no one really caring. I can't do it."
Yeah.
So from there, I very, very quickly catapulted. And I think because driven by this, like, how do I make it better for the operational staff? I worked in nuclear, rail, logistics, transport, and then was the director of safety in telecoms as well. And I did like a professional safety qualification every year for 9 years.
Wow.
And with dyslexia, with a full-time job, getting married, buying a house, starting a family, whatever it was, I was like, I need to study the stuff because I need to be able to get a job so I can help as many people as possible. And that was sort of my trait, is every job that I was ever contacted about, my first question, other than where is it and can I be with near my family, was how many people am I helping? And I went, if you go through the trajectory of the roles, it's like 1,800 people, 2,000, 3,500, 5,000, 36,000, and then to 175,000 with 30 million customers. Every time it's like, am I helping more people? If so, give it to me. So that's kind of a bit of my background, but I've done everything because it was through the ranks bit, as you mentioned. When I went into rail from nuclear, so I did all the engineering frontline stuff.
Mm.
In rail, I did everything from number crunching, data performance, writing policy, risk assessment review, went into logistics and did Northwest Europe, did my diploma there, did like global governance and ISO standards and everything. And so every single role really that I've ever recruited into my team, I've done that role. I know the value of it and I really care. So when I recruit, I very often create roles that don't exist in structures I've never been heard of,
Yeah.
because I'm like, that role and that role combined makes a really potent whatever it's like safety performance manager or analytics person, whatever. I will just go out and get the best person
Mm.
that can tell me what we need to do to create safe environments for the people I look after. That's my responsibility. So 21 years this year in August,
21 years.
and I wouldn't ever do anything different. This is like my absolute passion.
So, like, there's a few things in there. There's lots of things I want to strip back and
Yep.
dive into. But I'm going to ask this with, obviously your experiences post the health and safety profession.
Mm.
What would you say are the key things about you that have made you a good business leader? Because I think I think that would be really good for. We get a lot of academic students listening to the podcast. I think they'd
Yeah.
be really interested to hear that.
So I'm just going to write that down so I don't lose the thread of it. I think the thing that makes me a good business leader is my absolute mission. So I have my own internal mission, was to make the world a safer place to work.
Yep.
But when I enter an organization, I have one thing on my mind, which is how can I help?
Mm.
And I think if you go into an organization thinking, I like to do safety in this way, and you do a bit of a rinse and repeat,
Mm.
you'll get marginal gains. You absolutely will, no doubt. But the bigger question is, how can I help the organization reach their full potential? And I like to understand two really important things before I create a strategy. One of them is, what's the business's definition of success? So
Mhm.
what's the measure? What's the mission? Like, what is the absolute win for that organization? And then what is the win for the safety profession? Not me, not my version or flavor of safety, but in terms of winning for safety or the safety of people, what does that look like here? And
Mm.
what that makes you dive into is the unique risks that an operation will have versus another one. You can't rinse and repeat across industry.
Mm.
You have to really be aware of the pressures that come with industry. Every single industry is like its own community, and it will have different stresses and pressures, and quite particularly different risk profiles. So I think that's the thing that is, I will say to an organization, how can I help you? And that let me make it really clear how safety at the moment impacts you.
Mm.
And I can then create a strategy around removing that impact and helping you reach your success.
Mm.
And it just makes for great conversation,
Mm.
because every single director in your organization or your business will have their own version of success. But what is it? How
Yeah.
can you help? And it tears down that really monotonous conversation about safety is a moral game and you should do it. Of course, we should do it. That's why it's embedded in legislation. That's why there is case law to prove people died to make this stuff happen. But it's absolutely underplayed in terms of its commercial impact. How can we help? Endless amounts of ways. But you don't know what that is until you sit down with a leader in your organization and say, how can I help? So that would be, I think, the difference is I'm interested in the business really winning and it seeing safety as part of the win, not you should do this first and that bit second, because it's not real.
Yeah, and that ethical kind of that ethical thread that we all know is absolutely key and important. That's why there's legislation. How do we change that dynamic from and get that more? Yeah, how do we move that forward?
So I just wrote a sentence actually, and it was describing it was describing what my passion is, and I wrote something along the lines of my passion is to create safe and operationally potent organizations. And I think, right?
Oh, that's a line. That love that. I'm stealing that one.
Right? Safe, operationally potent organizations. And I
Mm,
think the narrative has to change, because what we tend to do is we strip safety and put it aside and say it's not part of that
mm,
success. It's not part of an operationally potent organization. It's separate. It's not. You can't win unless you have safe, healthy, well motivated people under your organization carrying it. I
mm,
think the narrative bit that has to change is by really focusing on well-beings, right, in the holistic sense of the term, you you win already. You are one step further on than your peers or your competitors. Imagine if you had every single member of your organization not sick, not pulling sickies because they're absolutely driven into the floor, and at their operational version of excellence.
mm.
Oh,
Oh,
like that's the bit that changes. So by prioritizing people, which is ethical, but by prioritizing them, operational potency,
mm.
100%.
Oh, I love that. Love that. I wrote that down here in my book. There's,
As long
there's
as you quote me, pal.
100%, of course. It was Sarah Brummett, actually, that's a good friend of mine. She does a lot of talks for us. She said it's called Steal with Pride. Just make sure you quote
Pinch of pride, I tell all my team that for sure.
absolutely. I'm going to hit on this because I think this is really interesting. Motivational, happy employees. Now, with that, I love that, by the way, and I think that's the absolute key. And but we then see the EHS leader as the glue between the rest of the corporate team, HR,
Mm, mm,
COO, CEO, because everybody has that responsibility of motivation, well-being, happiness in the workplace. You know that kind
mm.
of there's that change in speak up culture. I've heard about speak up culture being certainly at the top in the boardroom at the moment. Do you think in the 21 years that you've been in industry and in this profession, has there been a shift in the C-suite where people are starting to adapt to the importance of this within the functions and also as a team, not just we put this all on EHS or HR, but that sort of group. Sorry, typical that somebody will call me
Always the way. Yeah.
just when I'm on a call. I knew that was going to happen. I do apologise, listeners. I'll have to edit that one out. Have you seen a change in transformation in the boardroom as a result of understanding these things and these principles?
Yes. And I think probably most notable really in the last 10 years. And maybe everything's really changing. And if somebody was asking me recently, you mentioned about me being a female in my profession at the very beginning. And if I think about some of the behavior that I had to put up at the beginning of my career, especially around 80 male engineers and technicians,
Mm,
as an example, horrendous. And I
mm,
think the expectation of the workplace is changing. The expectation of the markets that we sit in as organizations is changing. We have people and customers picking the organizations they work with based off their ethical statements. Are they going for carbon zero, blah, blah, blah. So I think the expectation of the world of the organizations that are making money in it is changing. So therefore the boards have to. But I think if I think about how hard you had to fight for any form of investment, as an example, 10 years ago, or the responses to major incidents that you would get from board level 10 years ago or before, the stark difference now. And I think the telecoms industry is a really good example. Is if anything ever happened and we had to brief the board, when I worked in telecoms, the first thing the CEO of that organization would say to me is, how's the family? Like, is everything all right? Have we contacted them? Are they being supported? And I thought to myself, when I got to that organization, that's different, because
Mm.
the first thing that used to get said before then was, are the lawyers on board? Have we called is our representation engaged? It would be the butt cover before
Right.
the, oh my God, this is absolutely horrendous. Is their family all right?
Right.
So I think there has been a massive, massive change. And even in the peer groups that I'm now operating in and the conversations that I have at like networking events, the fight isn't as gritty. We
Mm.
don't really have to fight to get time at the board. It's our job to then make the time at the board potent, right? And to really deliver something that creates a validation of the reason that we were in the room in the first place. So we get room then on the next agenda or the next agenda. But it's different. There is a natural one. Safety culture discussions, workshops, organizations are working with major companies. So I think the appetite for this change at a cultural level is the appetite is there now. It just wasn't before.
This was this came up, and I read something about this, and it shocked me a little
Oh,
bit around responsibility. And don't want to, sometimes we need to look under the bonnet, and we need to sort of look at the root cause of major incidents and fatalities, right? But I read something that the responsibility was on the EHS professional. They led that department, and it really bothered me because businesses have changed now that everybody has a shared responsibility, right? Of yes, the EHS person is there to run the department, but that responsibility is a business responsibility, and it doesn't lie on the shoulders of the professional. And that shows that the maturity, right, of businesses, that they're starting now to take ownership and investment. You mentioned investment. People are starting to now pull the strings on investing into technology or just good cultural change
yeah.
programs, all that kind of stuff. What do you think has been the key for the positive change in EHS over the past sort of 10 years?
Around that responsibility piece about it being understood that it's a joint responsibility. I think oh, total honesty is, I think there is a couple of things. One of them is the major reality check.
Mm.
That if there is a technician in front of me and I tell him, hurry up, go up there faster and get to your next job, or slow down, you're going to hurt yourself. The reality of that person listening to me, no, if their director turns up and says, get up that ladder, get the job done quickly and get to the next one, the reality that that will have an effect on their speed of work and their pace is
Mm.
almost 100% guaranteed, right?
Sure.
So I think there is a reality check on who actually has an ability to influence
Mm.
performance, risk-taking behavior, pace, etc. It's never the safety professional. It is always the operation. And I think what's happened is we've seen that come out of prosecution investigations and court cases. So
Right.
we've seen boards, I think, be called out, operations be called out for their part and their responsibility to play when things really go wrong. So I think there hasn't been an ability not to listen to the fact that this is a shared responsibility. We literally changed the law around, the easiest example would be the Corporate Manslaughter and Homicide Act, right? Because we literally said the board are holistically responsible for the decision making, and they can collectively create action that causes death. We know that, and we can hold them to account. That never used to be the case.
Yeah.
So I think there's been legal shifts. There's probably been an awful lot of findings around prosecutions and from judges making statements from cases where we've lost life.
Mm.
And I think there has just been a hell of a reality check on actually who can create the difference. And I think I always said to one of the things that always changes in typically in an engineer's mind when I speak to them is I don't really believe in the paper side of safety.
Yeah.
We have to be able to write it down to demonstrate what we have arranged, blah. But I always say, if you're going to fall off a ladder, there is no point in time on that fall down that you go, oh, I wish I'd read that procedure,
Mm,
right? Or you land on a lovely procedure and it saves your butt. Like, it doesn't. We write things down to demonstrate what we have created in terms of a safe system of work.
sure.
That piece of paper never saves you. That is such a demonstration of what you have said is the right thing to do in the moment. It's the person taking the action, the pace created by the operation behind it, that essentially says, is it a good or a bad outcome? The
Sure.
culture around cutting corners or not, you first or not, creates a good or a bad outcome.
Love that. What would you say then on that note, if, paper-based stuff isn't what saves you? What would you say is the absolute imperative to focusing on good safety practice moving forward into the future?
If you were going to focus on good safety practice, I would say the first thing you have to really focus on for me would be the reality of work. Now, I said it's paper is the demonstration of, it's the first thing. If it goes really wrong, the first thing you should do, and the first thing a judge will do, an EHO will do, is say, give me your paper processes. They will look at whether that looks like a reasonable way of working. The second thing they will do is go and validate that that's executed on the ground, right? And it's given the time and the ability to be executed. But I think if you were going to really, really drill down and make the difference, it would be that nobody can create a process without the process owner in the room. So who is executing this process, this safety process? If it is an engineer, a lab technician, a shop floor attendant, you should go and review that piece of work with them in motion before you write it, or it should be done in collaboration with that person. Because I think one of the most dangerous things that we can do is guess. We can guess what the day looks like. And that's why we had this brief discussion before. I don't read any of the books. Safety 1, Safety 2, Safety Differently, like hot, but I don't read any of them. I absolutely believe in standing next to the engineer and saying, what does your worst day of work look like? When did it go all wrong? What did that look like?
Yeah,
That conversation will tell you when the chips are down, the corners that are cut, the unsafe behavior, and you can design process that answers to the worst day, not just the best day when the sun is shining, but when it is raining and I'm carrying my kit for a field. So I think you have to really understand the reality of work. That's first and foremost.
I love that. And I've had so many conversations in the past 3 months about HARP safety differently. Now, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but at the end of the day, sometimes, even for me, and I think we had this conversation pre-podcast, but in our preamble was there's so much. I see a new terminology thrown up every day. And I have to Google it because sometimes it can become really confusing. And I love your stripped back effort, which is stripped back, but you can hear the passion, but also the amazing work in the way that you articulate how you would go about running those particular processes and procedures from the amazing education that you have drilled down and given yourself over the past 20 years. And I must take my hat off to you, Crystal, because it's really inspiring. One of the things that I found really inspiring as well, and I'd like to ask a couple of questions on, is that sort of roles and responsibilities, that if you find something that you're creating those roles and responsibilities. Does that have anything to do with the too many hats challenge at the moment for an EHS professional? Because obviously I feel honestly a bit sorry for some of the amazing peers that I have in this industry, because they're constantly be giving new roles and new job titles. They've added the sustainability, although sustainability was always there. It's just become more prominent as an area that needs to be covered now. But environmental sustainability, mental health. We could go on forever. What is that because of that, or is that just because you're finding new areas that could be catered to a new role for one of your staff members?
So is your question, is the too many hats having an impact? Is that what the question is?
Yeah, and is that pulling towards the reason why you're creating those particular roles and responsibilities?
So I think it's really interesting because I have Alongside safety, the amount of bolt-on roles that I've had cover FM, ESG, crime and security, God, I can't remember, environment, quality, like name it.
Mm.
And I don't have a problem with any of them. And I see synergy in, positive income from negative outputs, right? So we want a positive reaction and resolution to negative events, whether it's crime, security, accidents, whatever.
Sure.
Um, and I don't really mind what an organization gives to me as a remit. In terms of the R&R bit, I think it's absolutely within my scope and has to be within the head of department. If you say to Jeff, right, Jeff, I want you to tackle health, well-being, and safety, there has to be a problem statement. What are you trying to fix? What is your definition of success? Back to that business piece, right? How can I help? What's your version of success? What's the occupation's version of success? Well, we want more productivity, less people sick, and we want like safer individuals. Like, cool. You should then be able to design all of the roles within your department around that mission. So structure must always follow strategy. And I think the thing that gets really twisted in this is people will do an org chart and then they'll write a strategy. You can't do that because you haven't actually decided or aligned anything to winning, right? So I think the too many hats, I think, is inevitable. We're a support function. We look at negative events all day long and we fix them. So we also look at negative impact on environment or negative impact from a crime perspective, and we say, can we help all of it? The answer is yeah, there's synergy, right? If you want to be a stripped back safety, like purely safety person, there are absolutely organizations that do that really, really well. And I would say apply there. But my kind of feeling on this is safety is not difficult to break down in, and I see it as three things: your ability to identify your problem, your ability to understand your problem, and the ability to mitigate, accept, or remove your problem. That's it. That's why you can do it in every single industry. It's irrelevant, right? It's how do you see it reactively, proactively? How do you understand it? What form of investigation, reactive or proactive? How do you mitigate, accept, or remove? That's it. Safety end to end, any industry, any point in time. And you can kind of apply the same things to environment, right? Is like what goes wrong? How do you ID your risk? How do you really understand it? And are you accepting and mitigating it or removing it? So I'm open to all of it. I'm definitely not precious on the like bolt what you like on, as far as I'm concerned. If I can help you reach your version of success, and that's the answer to your question, which is how can I help you? Then pile it on. As long as I have the ability to create great roles that serve that purpose, and I can give people clear roles and responsibilities, and we don't mash them up, I'm good.
Love that. Fantastic. I want to address this. It won't take too much more of your time, but I do want to address this. Uh, Equality, diversity, inclusion. I mean, I personally, from an outsider's perspective, as an events organizer, not granular within an organization or in an EHS department, but from an outsider's perspective, it looks like there's been some huge steps forward, which is just amazing. I know you've played a massive influential role in that alongside some of the amazing women in our profession. Um, would you mind sort of maybe giving us a brief overview of maybe why it's been an area that you're so passionate about? I mean, obviously it's pretty obvious, but maybe just for the listeners, maybe give a bit of a 360, and also then maybe bolt on the end, you know, what needs to happen to continue this amazing resurgence, which should be happening within our space.
Why is it important to me? I think it's not just from a safety perspective, it's from a leadership perspective. And I think if I look around, typically the layer underneath where I am, I will see a lot of incredible women with high caliber, who are high caliber, and they just can't quite get through the door. And I see some people giving up, some people feeling exasperated or frustrated. I actually had my partner works in the motorsports industry, and we went out for a curry on Friday night, and we had some of the apprentices round for beer, right? I fed them, I watered them, I encouraged them. And there was a girl that works in IT, right? And if you're listening, girly, love you. And she is young, she did an IT apprenticeship, and she was saying how tough it is to be a woman. She said, and I quote, that looks pretty and that has an accent. She's Northern, right? And she was like, the ability for someone to take me seriously, it's heartbreaking, right? And I get it. And I said, actually, I didn't always sound like this. This is just being, I don't know where it come from, but I grew up in a council estate. I have a load of brothers. I grew up like professionally around 60 dudes that were over 50. And I didn't ever fit anywhere. And also the really interesting thing from the outside, I'm part of the LBGT community and bi, and I was never gay enough to be gay, and I was never straight enough to be straight. So it didn't matter where I was sat, it was like, you don't quite fit here. And then you pole vault forward 21 years, and I've got this young lady sat around my dining room table saying it's hard. And I'm like, that is why I have to be here. This is why I have to be vocal. This is why I have to create a different narrative around women in leadership. Forget whether it's safety, IT, FMG, whatever it is. I need the world to really understand that we are legitimately incredible resources. And actually, sometimes you might just need to take a punt. And one of the job before this one, I've got 3 jobs at the moment, but the one before this, my old boss said to me before he retired, he said, you were my champagne moment. And I will never forget this. And this was something that really solidified. This would be now 8 years ago. Damn, this is needed. So we were at Christmas, we went to a champagne bar and he bought everybody a glass of champagne. Merry Christmas. And he had a couple and he said, can I just say, I've never said this before, but I've had 3 champagne moments in my 40 years, and you were one of them. You were my most recent one of my 3 champagne moments. I said, oh, go for it. That's not, immediately feeling like warm and bubbly. And he said, your name was in my pack. Everybody else for this role had director before them, and you had head of. And I thought you were agenda cool. They said, we were honest relationship, right? And I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
I assumed you were the gender cool because there weren't really any other women in the pack. So I didn't ask any questions, but I also didn't really engage with your CV that much because I assumed you were there for the balance of the pack. Everybody interviewed. And the minute you left the room, I was like, damn, okay, that woman needs to be hired. And they didn't hire me for the job I interviewed for. They turned that down to create the biggest job in the group and give me that job. But just by, and this leads to your next bit, what can we do? Just by, and maybe it was a gender call. Maybe my CV went in that pack as a gender call, but it created the door open for me to blow them away.
Yeah.
And to be able to lead that team and change it and change that business. And then if I think about where I am now, the ratio of men to women was really low. I haven't hired anybody, but what I have done is shown some incredibly engaged men that have the power to go seek and find great talent. All I've done, everyone says, oh, how many women in your team now? It's almost a 50-50 split in 3 years, right? How did you do that? I haven't done anything, but I have been visible to some incredible men that are highly engaged, and they can see, damn, different is good. Different mindset, different skill set, different way of talking, different way of presenting works.
Yeah.
Let's be more open. And that's what I'm trying to do, is it's trying to create a mindset where if you have academics listening to this, if you have CEOs, anybody listening to this, it's, I'm not a great woman doing what I'm doing. I'm a great leader that is a woman. And if you haven't got plenty of those around you, open the door, right? Because damn straight you will have plenty of champagne moments where you meet somebody that doesn't have that right CV title, doesn't have the current head, but it's probably because she might not have had the opportunity before you make it an opportunity for her. So that's why I'm passionate. And you'll see here, I have a daughter, and I need her to step into a world where she is equally valued as her stepbrother.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's it.
I actually don't want to say anything after that because I'm really taken back by it. I mean, I will try because I I have to get because I want to be inclusive as well with men in a way. But
You
I
have to be.
that's that. But I'm going to speak. I'm going to speak honestly.
Yeah.
If women have always been my best employees. No offense, Josh. Josh knows I love him, and Elliot. I love Elliot to pieces. He was fantastic. But Katie and Amy, Katie especially, is incredible, and she
Mm.
is incredible at what she does, and she does so many things. And let me take this outside of business. What
Yep.
she does at home, what she does at home when she's been going to events with a baby, carrying a baby on her front because we can't be without him, and it blows me away so much so that I'm the first to jump up and hire female leaders that are female, people that are just fantastic at what they do. But
Mm.
I've just been inspired so much by the amazing things that you and a lot of the women in our profession, the leaders in our profession, have done over the past 3 or 4 years, and it really is absolutely amazing. And I've got two girls as well, and it just
It's a responsibility, mate, to make the world a better, literally a safer, and that's psychologically and physically a safer place to work.
mm,
And I tell you what, on that front, I think the most important thing for me to say is, and I love that you said it, the real gift in this is not women shouting louder, it's people in power being more open to different. That's actually the reason it's inclusion, is because we need to feel included.
sure,
And I witnessed something that I think will probably go very recently. It will take me through my entire career. And I watched a senior, very, very senior leader do something called a facet 5. It was like personality review of the team and him, and then they do something called I think it's called like a landscape review. So you look at how everyone in the team works together, where they might clash, but also the holes that small characteristics might fill, all that sort of stuff. And I watched this leader have 5 direct reports or 4 direct reports, and on every scale, so introvert to extrovert, the whatever, all of the different traits that we were measured on in terms of personality, he was one end, and literally the entire team were the other end, every single score. To the point I was looking at thinking, I'm starting to feel uncomfortable. I feel like we might be isolating him, and
wow,
he might be feeling unincluded. And at a certain point, the facilitator says to this gentleman, how are you feeling about this? And you've got your piece of paper and everyone's in a quadrant and you're in like bottom left and everybody is like scattered in top right. And he said something that I thought was so profound. And he said, I'm so proud of myself. And I was like, I think everyone was expecting like I don't like this. I'm so proud of myself because I have looked outside of myself and I have found everything the business needs, even if it is the complete opposite to me.
wow,
How can I help? Driven into this guy's DNA. Nobody around his table operates or thinks like him, presents like him, acts like him. And in every single interview, he must have seen the opposite. You know, when you're in an interview and you think, am I going to get along with this guy, gender neutral guys, right?
yeah,
Am I going to get along with this person? Blah blah blah. What do I have in common with them? Are they going to gel with the team? He literally said, "Forget me. What does the future of this organization need?" And even if it was the complete opposite and abstract to him, picked it. And when I tell you this team was potent now, oh, and it was that, which is open to different, open to looks different, sounds different, is different. Because it was how can they demonstrate their ability to hit the challenge? So you might not be able to fill everything on a JD, but can you hit a challenge? Yes, come in.
mm,
That's incredible, I think. So the power is absolutely in the people that hold the CVs in their hands and do the sifting.
a quick one because I know we're running out of time. But you said looks different, sounds different, is different. Is that right?
Yeah.
How about if you took that model to EHS? Is that possible? I'm just thinking outside the box here. Because we want to continue to innovate. We want to continue to inspire. That word different.
Mm.
There is an element of I've certainly seen it in all the conversations I've had, and this is fine. Everybody agrees. There's a lot of echo chambering on certain
Yep.
subjects. There's a lot of arguing still going on. We were going to say about that collaborative effort. This is a non-competitive profession. Where do we need to think outside the box in EHS? And could we take that model of looks different, sounds different, is different to the profession?
So I actually think, and a lot of this is being drawn out of the work that Anna Keane is doing in this, like looking for the next generation of safety. My
Sure.
first question, actually, when we started that conversation, was like, hold up, do you mean the next generation of me and
Mm.
everyone that looks and sounds and is like me, like the cardboard cutters that we've got that all believe in the same stuff? Because the reason we have been really good is because we do not look, sound, and we're not the same as what came before.
Sure.
Are we looking for the next people that are different, or are we looking at for the cardboard cutouts? And maybe there is much more to squeeze out of the lemon in the people that operate like us,
Mm.
but yeah, what's different? Who's new? What's the technology? Who's into AI? What businesses are changing the way that we do safety? Like, I think I think there is room for old and new, and there is something that I find really valuable in saying there is people the beginning, the middle, and the end of their career, and every single one of them holds value if they give for a greater purpose, right? Absolutely right. So I think you can squeeze more juice out of the lemon by taking that to any profession, including EHS for sure.
Sure.
So I would say, where are those people that are like currently going through uni, doing apprenticeships, those sorts of people that I want somebody to come in and go, why are we doing it like this? And for me to be like, oh, I love it. Doing what, like what? And like literally rip it apart. Why are you writing it down? Why are you using an app? Why are you writing up reports in that way? Like, rip it up. Like, tell me how we could be doing this different. So, yes, I do absolutely think that includes EHS.
Good.
And I can't wait to meet somebody that is, and actually I have some people that do it for me now that
Mm.
are just constantly questioning why, and I
Mm.
love it. Is
Mm.
this the bigger purpose? And I've got one dude that works for me, and I said, you have an objective, which is objective A, and then when we did the strategy, I was like, I really want you to focus right here. These are my versions of success, business versions of success. Drive at them.
Mm.
Halfway through the year, I said, how are you going on this side objectives that I did? And he went, I'm not touching it. And I
Mm.
was like, excuse me? And
Yeah.
he was like, dude, they're not in any of your versions of success. They don't align to it. So I'm not touching it unless you tell me that the versions of success are different. And I was like, oh, I love it. Right, throw it in the bin, carry on. Let's get on with it. So yeah, I think there's room for all of it, mate, for sure, in short.
Love it. I'm going to finish on this. I've got one more question for you, but if we go back to what you said right at the start, and honestly, this has been really interesting over the past 2.5 months since we've been doing Change the Safety podcast. That I think out of the 15 interviews I've done, I think 10 of those people fell in to health and safety. Let's pray and hope that in 10, 15, 20 years time, if I'm around doing these podcasts, that people that we've got bringing on the future leaders of tomorrow, they come in and say the opposite. And don't get me wrong, we're absolutely so privileged and lucky that people like yourself have fallen into safety, because it's helped change this profession. So, on behalf of everybody, thank you very much for all that you do. Let me ask you this question. Let's say in 15, 20 years, 30 years, I personally have, by the time I retire, 70 years old, I committed to EHS as an events organizer for one reason, and that was because, yeah, I could go and do events in any profession, but this one, there's generally an opportunity to do something good for the world. There's got an opportunity to provide a service that can tangibly make a difference and make sure that people come home safe from work. And I'd rather have that legacy than anything else. In retirement days of Crystal Danbury, what would your kind of target legacy be, that you could say?
What do I want to leave behind?
Mm.
I would want to leave behind knowledge that I saved the lives I saved lives that I never knew about, right? That's the most important thing for me, to be able to like get on my deathbed all old and wrinkly and be like, I changed the world and people didn't even people's worlds, and they never had to know. They never had to see the risk, they never had to lose anything. As my old boss used to say when I was like, lots of the work is hidden that I do, and he was like, your reward is not here, it is in heaven. And I was like, right, okay, fine. And I would say I would love to be able to look back and know that we've left a generation of people that are not focused on the paper and writing successes and inspection done, but it is outcome driven, which is what did you find and what did you fix, to focus on real safety, individuals that look at the real risk to people, that will stand in front of a risk and say, we're not doing this anymore because this harms people. So I think for me, it would be the big shift that has to happen to go from compliance driven culture to a care driven organizations. If I could go into retirement knowing that we've shifted to care driven and our first consideration is, are our people okay? I'm done. Like I am, might drop out, fetch me the bubbly, happy as Larry.
Love it. Crystal, thank you so very much for being
Thank
on the
you.
Changing Safety podcast. Again, thank you for all that you do for the profession. And yeah, I'm sure we'll continue to work closely together now and into the future. But yeah, thank you very much. If anybody would like to get in touch with Crystal, LinkedIn, I'm assuming, is probably
Yep.
best.
Yep, definitely. Anytime.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Crystal.
Thank you.